This is, I would argue, aside from posterior lateral breath, this is the deep breathing through all sides of the rib cage. This is probably one of the most foundational aspects to supported and safe movement across all modalities. You know, in yoga and in Pilates and in dance and in martial art and in gymnastics and even in extreme sports, you know, these athletes are also being trained like gymnasts. And so this inner unit connection or this powerhouse connection or the Danchen or whatever you want to call it, Mula, Uddiyana, Bandha, this is something that is foundational in all modalities. And so that's kind of what I want to work on today. And so we're going to bring in some exercises that I call magnifying glasses that will help kind of shine a deeper awareness on these areas where we're trying to cultivate awareness and connection. There's going to be a real tendency to want to slam into the cues that I'm giving today, you know, really tighten up and really feel the thing. But my recommendation is just start at 30% across the board on everything, right? Just because this is kind of a subtle practice. So I want to get right into it. And the way I want to do that is I want to start standing. Make sure you have a block and a strap or some analog thereof. If you have a Pilates ball in the room, you can use that. You can use a rolled up towel. Excellent. So the first thing that I want to do,
hooray
is right, is I just want to find our standing alignment and just start to build that gentle awareness. So the way we're going to do that is stand in your neutral first. Wait, whatever you think your neutral is. Take a little bit of time to just breathe in that, in whatever you think deep breath is. Just notice now, not what's going on in the outer space of where your body is positioned, but notice what's going on in the inner space of the body. Where are you feeling constricted? Where are you feeling tight? Maybe notice where you might be feeling supported. Or where you might notice a lack of integrity. And so we want to try to carry this subtle awareness, this inner body awareness, as we progress throughout this practice. We're going to build this subtle awareness and this subtle connection to the deep intrinsic core muscles. Working with the breath synergistically. And then we'll try to carry that connection or those connections into increasingly challenging positions. Okay, so let's take a look at our feet. This might be common knowledge for all of us, but it bears repeating. So you might notice maybe your feet are turned out. Maybe that feels neutral to you. And everyone's hips are turned slightly differently, but what we do want to try to go for is we want to try to find, if we're speaking from the hips, we want to find for this practice parallel in the hip bones. It's called the ASIS. And we want that line going straight down into the ground in each leg. These lines are traveling down the midlines of each leg. And as you follow downward, you'll also notice it's traveling down the midlines of the feet. And so the cue for this is we just want to find something as close to parallel in the midlines of the feet and the legs as possible. The reason why we want to do this is because the position of our feet and our legs will dictate the position of our pelvis. And so I knew I was going to forget this, but I'm glad that I'm home. Pardon all the noise here, but we'll just say it's for science. So just notice as you're standing in this more neutral alignment for the feet, just notice if you already feel a really subtle connection in the musculature of the legs. You might even notice that you feel a more subtle connection in the musculature of the core. Hilarious here. Ah, perfect. So very clumsy illustration indeed. I'm going to come on in, but we want to kind of imagine our pelvis as this punch bowl here, yeah? And so when the feet are turned out too much, what ends up happening is this punch bowl tends to tilt back. And it puts our spine in this round position. And likewise, the opposite, when you internally rotate the feet too much, which is a less prominent pattern in folks, you see this anterior tilt. And so we want to find neutral, and the way that we find neutral in the pelvis is by getting the midlines of the feet and the legs parallel to one another, okay? We need to find neutral so that we can ultimately find our cat or flexed position in the spine supported by these deep core muscles. The next thing I want you to think about also is the rib cage, which is kind of like this, right? It's this upside down punch bowl. It's a little more oblong. But to make a long story short, you want to try to get this punch bowl and this punch bowl completely flush with one another. We want to avoid this, and we want to avoid this. Can everyone give me a thumbs up if that makes sense to you? Awesome, 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 grand. Okay, good. So when we're talking alignment, we just want to avoid rib flare. We want to avoid over swinging the back, and we want to avoid, for most of us, overturning the feet. Those things tend to put our position into our skeletal system, and those things over years tend to cause dysfunction in the body, okay? So just knowing what neutral is a good way to say, hey, musculature of the body, can you support me as I just move through life, okay? Our next kind of cue in alignment is we want to make sure that our shoulders, pardon the audio here, I'm going to be very specific, are grounded. Not rounded, but grounded. Gently moving downward away from the ears. You should be able to feel the shoulder blades and the shoulders themselves kind of sitting down into a saddle of the body. When you do that, you'll also notice that your neck feels a little bit longer. The final thing I want you to do, just to make it real simple, is you want to try to aim the roof of your mouth parallel to the floor. What that should do for most of us is it should draw our chin in gently, and it might give you a little bit more length in the neck. Shake a hand if that made sense to everyone. Okay, good. Yes. Okay. So here we have our neutral standing position. We're going to put our fingertips in the air like this, And then what I'd like you to do is palpate on your hip bones. That's better. I like that. Okay, good. I like screen adjustments. This is your ASIS. Good. I would like you to go 1 inch in and then 1 inch down. Now, just pretend that your legs are made of a little bit of cement, right? You want to create some integrity in the legs, not too much bend in the knees. And then all I'd like you to do is a la the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, very subtly without bending at the hips or the knees, just hinge forward a little bit. See how straight my body is, and I'm just leaning forward on the tips of my feet. A relaxed core. Most folks, when you lean forward, what you should feel, if your body's completely straight, is you should actually feel the muscles of your core engage very slightly. Give it a couple tries. Good straight body, only hinging at the ankles. Yeah. Keeping your core as relaxed as possible as you do this. And notice that when you hinge forward, the core muscles engage very slightly. It's a subtle engagement. Is anyone noticing that? Can you give me a thumbs up if you are? A thumbs up, a thumbs up, a thumbs up. Okay. So good to know. If you aren't feeling anything in this class, I don't want you to panic. This is not an awareness that either you get it or you don't at the end of the class. This is something, CAT, shorthand for lifting the pelvic floor muscles, connecting to the transverse abdominis, and getting the breath to work synergistically with the position or movement. I call all of that CAT, okay? Or I'll refer to CAT as flexion in the body. That awareness is built over time. But today might be the beginning of you cultivating that awareness. Just know it takes time. It's totally normal. Okay, so that muscle you felt engage very subtly is the transverse abdominis. The minute that you start to over squeeze that muscle on purpose is the minute that you start to use your obliques, and it's the minute you start to use your rectus abdominis, right? These are more surface muscles. The transverse abdominis is a girdle-like muscle, okay? Folks with very, very flat stomachs tend to have a more connected transverse. When you laugh or cough, your transverse connects. It's your postural support muscle, or one of them, okay? So what we want to try to do here is try to carry this subtle connection throughout all the positions and actions we do today. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Again, if you succeed, great. If you don't succeed, don't worry, okay? We're building this awareness. Okay, the next thing I want to do is, with our kind of connected and aligned body, I want to find that pelvic floor muscle, okay? We're going to take our block, or we're going to take our Pilates ball, and we're going to place it between our thighs. I'll move my light a little bit. Where between the thighs? I would say not between the knees, and I would say not all the way up. I would say just a couple of inches from the pubis. Now, if you're using a yoga block, what you might notice is this actually helps reinforce more neutral in the feet, right? Your midlines are more likely to be connected or parallel. Pelvis is more likely to be neutral. I would like you now to just squeeze on that block using your inner thigh muscles. We're looking for a 30% connection here. Nothing really intense or hard or jagged. Why are we doing this? Is because neurologically and muscularly, I guess, the adductors, the inner thigh muscles, have a connection to the pelvic floor muscles. So by bringing this gentle squeeze on a ball or a block or a pillow or anything, what we're doing is we're setting up a better condition for us to be able to lift the pelvic floor. So let's do that now. Let's just lift the pelvic floor and see what that feels like. And I'd like you to try to direct this connection not to the back of the pelvic floor, right? We're trying to avoid squeezing the anal sphincter. What we're actually trying to do is lift the front of the pelvic floor. This is kind of one of the more nebulous connections for most people who are just finding it. But again, I think we have. Karen, you got a question? No? Okay, she's good. So what we're doing is we're creating intra-abdominal pressure and support using a cylinder of muscles. The bottom of the cylinder is the pelvic floor. The sides of the cylinder is the transverse abdominis. And then the top of the cylinder is our breath or diaphragm, right? So right now we're just working on connecting to that bottom of the cylinder. Consider lifting the front of the pelvic floor up, and imagine all that energy traveling up through your body and out of your mouth. Maybe the cue can be now. Inhale and release pelvic floor. Exhale and lift pelvic floor. And let's just do that for, I'd say, 30 seconds. That gentle connection with the adductors, the inner thighs, will help cultivate a better connection there. And this is our first cue where I'm bringing in the breath. Okay. So release the block for a second, but keep it on hand because we're going to place it right back there. Okay, just to recap. Went a little out of order. Usually I go pelvic floor first. But what we did is transverse abdominis. We've gotten a connection or an awareness that connection exists. We've got pelvic floor. And now I want to talk about the diaphragm and how that comes into play. And so it's always opposite. And so it confuses me a little bit. So what ends up happening is when we're inhaling, the diaphragm drops. Okay. And what that does is it draws in air into the lungs. It's a negative and positive pressure differential between the outside of our bodies and the inside of our bodies, right? And so then when we expel the air, what ends up happening is that diaphragm lifts and kind of presses it outward. This is a dome-shaped muscle. This is the top of our diaphragm. And so what we want that muscle to do is we want it to help support our spine and also work with this girdle muscle. We can call it TA for short, and the pelvic floor muscle. Okay, so far, we've got all of our muscles kind of in awareness. Now what I want to do is actually take our strap or our hands. Let's just, in the interest of making things a little bit simple, see if this works. We're going to take the palms of our hands, and we're going to place them on the heads of our ribs, just so that our fingertips are maybe just a 1/16 or 1/4 of an inch apart. We have our neutral standing position. On the inhale, what we want to work on doing is releasing the intrinsic connection in all of these deep core muscles. And what we want to work on doing instead is expanding through the side ribs, the front ribs, and the back body. So it's that 360 breath that's going out, not up. And so in breath, expand in all directions. You might notice your fingertips move away from each other. It's showing you that you're headed in the right direction. On the exhale, lift the pelvic floor. Find that gentle connection in the transverse abdominis without leaning forward. Good. Inhale, release, and exhale, connect. So that's the pattern. We're just doing that for about 30 to 45 seconds. You're inhaling, releasing the pelvic floor and the transverse abdominis, but expanding the rib cage in all directions. Exhale, we're releasing the air, but we're lifting the pelvic floor and we're wrapping those deep abdominals around the waist very subtly. Good. So I always say, as long as you can do this, you're doing Pilates. It doesn't matter to me what the movement is. It doesn't matter to me what the name of the movement is or whether it's traditional Pilates or not. If you're doing this, in the world of Pilates, you're doing Pilates. If you're not doing this, you're doing a core class or you're doing something else. So this to me is a superpower, okay? If you can learn how to connect this to your movements and your breath, both in class and in the gym, so to speak, and in your day-to-day life, you can move much more skillfully and much more safely and with much more strength throughout your body. So let's start to bring this into different positions. If you can lie on your stomach. I'm going to start to move this thing along a little bit. I'm going to have you lie prone on your stomach. Now, if you have a little towel that you want to place under your head or place your head on your hands, that's fine. I don't want to get too wacky with giving you rules for alignment, so I'm going to give you the position, and anything that comes up for this, I'll mention. But once you get on your stomach, what I'd like you to do here is lift your feet, so you're going to bend your knees. Keep your ankles relaxed. We're not going too wild here. And we're just working on this diaphragmatic posterior lateral breath here. The same thing we were doing standing now, okay? So when we inhale, we're going to feel the rib cage and the belly, yes, but we're going to feel the front rib cage expand, and we might feel the side rib cage expand on our clothes. On the exhale, now that we're horizontally aligned, we're going to try to lift the pelvic floor. And imagine lifting the transverse abdominals all the way up out of your mouth. This kind of trajectory with all of the core muscles on the exhale. And then on the inhale, you expand the body. Release those muscles for a second. On an exhale, we connect. It's that 30% intrinsic connection. Good. Just a couple more breaths here. And so this is just a way to really find and connect to that diaphragmatic breath, that posterior lateral diaphragmatic breath working with the core musculature. And so we want to focus on this pattern, this inhale to expand, exhale to connect and lift, no matter what position we're in or no matter what action we're doing today. Success, great. Not success, that's fine. We're just building awareness, that's it. Because I'm going to be mentioning cat in all of my classes, so we're building into this. Okay, so let's try to get into a child's pose. Maybe not your widest need child's pose, maybe a little more narrow than you're used to doing. We're just going to take maybe 5 breaths. And you want to feel that expansion of your trunk on your legs while you're in child's pose. You want to feel the low back expand. Maybe if you're lucky, you could feel the upper back expand, not up, but out. And then on your exhale, just work from connecting to the core in this position. Maybe it feels different. Maybe it's more accessible now that your knees are up. Just 1 or 2 more deep breaths. And then from there, I'm going to have you shift into an all fours position, my friends. Take that block and we're going to place it back between the thighs as promised. So all fours, hands and knees. From this spine in horizontal position, to take it back to previous work, we want to try to keep our arms in horse. Horse again means we're connecting the musculature of the arms to the bones of the arms. That means really straightening with integrity. We're going to horse the shoulders gently, which means that we're just going to make sure that our shoulders are connected to our bodies. There's distance between our shoulders and ears. Now, block between the thighs. So we are bringing about a gentle squeeze on the block with our inner thighs. Good. It's great for your sacrum too to do that. Let's just work on finding deep breath. Inhale, feel the shirt tighten on your back as your rib cage expands outward. Exhale from this position. Feel the pelvic floor muscles lift, and maybe if your awareness is sharp, you'll feel the abdominals wrap around the waist. Or maybe you'll just feel some connection under your belly button. Let's repeat that pattern 1 or 2 times. Keep breathing into that. And then we're going to take in cat and horse in the spine. Also affectionately known as cat and cow or flexion and extension. So whenever we are catting our spine, we are bringing our spine into an aligned flexion, right? Aligned flexion means we're really trying to keep the neck long. We're not trying to crowd the neck. There's awareness in the shoulders. But you'll also notice that this is supported by the abdominals. Can't really flex the spine in most positions without connection to abdominals. Let's stay in cat in the spine with a long neck. So maybe your gaze is between your hands. Inhale, expand the ribs here. Exhale, bring in that cat connection in the core muscles, pelvic floor lifts, abdominals wrap. Repeat that action for just a couple breaths and notice that when you bring in that pelvic floor and abdominal connection, you might be able to bring in more flexion in the spine. Maybe just a little bit, a 1/16 of an inch. Is your head following the entirety of your spine? Good. Now we'll horse or we'll cow the spine. So when you're ready, extend, lengthen the spine and hold. Keep the chin tucked and the neck long. So the entire spine from the crown of the head to the tailbone is long and extended. The chin is tucked and the gaze is toward or past the front of your mat. You should be able to speak without a strained voice. And your tailbone is reaching behind you, and the top of your head, your ponytail knot, is reaching in front of you into infinity, away from each other. Inhale and see what this great expansion through the rib cage feels like. Exhale, bring in that deep core connection I call cat in the core. Follow that pattern of the breath. Inhaling to expand. Exhaling to connect the core muscles. Inhaling to expand. Exhaling to connect to the core muscles in extension, or horse in the spine, as I call it. 1 or 2 more breaths here. And what you might notice is when you bring in that cat connection in the floor and the TA muscles, is you might feel a stretch in your abdominals or even in your sacrum when you do that. A couple more deep breaths here. And then just move now between flexion and extension, or cat and horse as I call it, while keeping that connection to the core and the breaths. So maybe when you're in your horse, your extended spine, yeah, you're expanding the ribs on the inhale. And then when you go into flexion, that's when you connect to the core muscles. Then you go into, you go into flexion. You exhale then. Sorry. Inhale to lengthen the spine, expand the ribs. Exhale to connect to the core and flex the spine. Rinse, wash, repeat. What happens if you could bring in a little bit of cat in the abdominal muscles when your spine is in extension? You might notice it takes that extension also off the spinal column. It might help you feel more supported. So if you were in my horse class, you heard me say, there's always a little bit of cat in our horse in the body, and there's always a little bit of horse in our cat. There's always a little flexion that supports extension. There's always a little bit of extension that supports flexion. Good. One or two more times here just to really drive it home. And now all of a sudden, rubber is going to meet the road. Can you carry this intrinsic connection in the breath and in the core as we segue from our all fours position to a plank position? So all a plank is what we did at the beginning of the class. That's our standing alignment here, friends, right? That's our standing alignment, but with our hands forward. That's it, except we're facing the ground instead of upright. So from our all fours, you can release your block. That also tricked you into not over swinging your pelvis. I usually like to reveal that afterward if you have the block between the thighs. Now we'll extend one leg. Horse the leg. Again, what that means is you're hugging the muscles of the leg to the bones of the leg, and you're drawing the kneecap up onto the leg, straightening it as much as you can. Can you do that so much that you feel your glute muscle connect? Just by doing that, you may start to feel the TA, the transverse abdominis muscle connect automatically. And that just has to do with your relationship with gravity. Let's straighten the other leg. Friendly note, you can do this with your knees on the ground as long as you ensure that you have a straight line from the top of your head to your knees on the ground, not lifting the butt. Now take breaks as you need. We're going to do this a couple of times. But when you inhale, see if you can feel the shirt tighten on your back as your rib cage expands out. As you exhale, really try to connect to those deep intrinsic core muscles a little bit more. The whole time we have our legs straight and the midlines of our feet and legs parallel. Take a break if you haven't considered doing so yet. From that break, maybe child's pose is a good idea because we are going to go back into it. Child's pose, you just breathe into your knees or your legs and feel that breath expand out. I'm going to cue us to do that one more time. And let's see here, I can be aided by technology. So shake your wrists off, big circles in the wrists. All we're trying to do is bring that standing connection we did at the beginning of the class, that subtle 30% connection into our bodies. Now that we're doing basically a mountain pose, but horizontal. It's a plank or front support. So, okay, let's get into it if we haven't started to. Good entry is all fours position. From all fours position, we straighten one leg at a time, really bringing strength into the legs. If you're doing forearm plank, that's great. You can still find it. In fact, you're going to feel it even more. So good. Good, straight, strong legs. Midlines of the legs are parallel. Inhale, expand the rib cage out in all directions. Exhale, lift the pelvic floor. Feel the abdominals connect just a tiny bit more. Inhale, expand. Exhale, connect to that cat in the core muscles. Chin is tucked, neck is long. Okay, Google, set a timer for 25 seconds. Oh, that's mean. 25 seconds. Okay, good. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do it the whole time. If you are doing a forearm plank, maybe you can get your forearms parallel to each other and see what that does. 15 seconds, everyone. 5 seconds. And break. Okay, Google, stop. Okay, Google, stop. You're embarrassing me. Okay, Google, stop. Man, it usually always works. So, all right, so just a couple of questions before we move back into this. I'm going to give you a step up, okay, if you're looking for it. Everything that we did today so far is helping you build an awareness and a connection to your core muscles. So I know that wrists are a big problem for everyone just in these types of practices. And by mobilizing them, that's the best thing that you can do in the moment and stretch them. So anything that felt good to you, that gave you this connection to the breath and the core muscles working synergistically, then do that if you don't want to do plank or the modification I'm going to give you. Again, all we're working on is developing this superpower. Whatever position I'm giving you is somewhat arbitrary. I'm just trying to give you either something that will help magnify or create a layer to work through when you're connecting the core. Okay. So we're going to go back to our front support or our plank position. Looking good on time still. Don't do it quite yet. Can I demonstrate something? The secondary modification to this is you're going to have your knees under your hip sockets or slightly forward too. We're still trying to work, friends, this kind of midlines of the legs and feet parallel condition, because this actually helps us connect to all these muscles. Your second option here is a raised knee plank. Now, seems friendly, but it's pretty challenging and it'll help you connect to the core more. If you want more of a challenge, you would bring your knees back behind your pelvis, but the knee's still bent, okay? So you're creating a tabletop in your back, just to phrase it differently. All right, let's get it all together here. We are trying to connect to our cat in the core while we're in a plank condition. That's what we're doing here. So let's find our plank, whichever plank works best. We're just applying load skillfully to the body, and we're trying to see how the core is helping support us. Maybe noticing right now, is it making it harder for me in some ways? I'll take inventory after this. Do I feel like it's less in my shoulder? Or do I feel like it's less in my low back when I use my core muscles? Maybe some lucky folks feel like they're floating a little bit when they do this. Maybe. I'm going to give about 20 seconds more space for you to play with this or rest before we move into our next series of movements, trying to carry this over. Good. And release. Take a second, sit back, breathe into it. Now, I'm just taking a poll here. Give me a high thumbs up if you felt like maybe that enhanced your plank a little bit. Yeah, good, excellent, I'm glad. Now, give me a high thumbs up if maybe it made it a little bit harder also. Anyone? Yeah, yeah, and it will, right? And so if you're really, maybe you do this, maybe this is just a really great refresher for you, but if you're really taking the space to try to find more connection or more awareness of the connection, I guess I should say, it does kind of slow down time while you're in that plank a little bit. So good work, everyone. So I'm going to move into position called a triple 90 position. And I'm going to demonstrate first quickly. This is the first modification, or the first version, okay? This is not always awesome for everybody, and I honor that. But I'm going to show this one first. And most people might be able to get into it this way. If we lay down, basically both your legs are in a double 90 stacked. You're just going to take your knee back so that you have a knee, hip, shoulder, head alignment. You're then going to place your hand on your ASIS or slightly behind your back. All we're doing here is the same thing we've been doing, just in a side plank-esque condition. This is actually called the triple 90 position. Okay. So here I am, I'm inhaling and I'm breathing, inhaling posterior laterally through the whole rib cage. I'm exhaling, I'm catting my core muscles. This pelvic floor lift and abdominal wrap up and out the mouth. Inhale, expand out, not up. Exhale, connect. So that's the first modification. The second modification is you're going to inhale, expand out through the rib cage. Exhale, connect to the core. You're going to turn your top shoulder down, and you're going to look through the window at your heel behind you. And then you'll inhale up. When you inhale up, you're expanding and lifting your right shoulder. Exhale, lifting pelvic floor, wrapping the abdominals, and looking through the window under your arm toward your heel. Okay. Maybe we lie on our left side as a family, just so we're all on the same page. Is that okay, everyone? You might have already started, but I'm going to just give you some cues, because you'll all have a video of this afterward, and it might be nice to just have progressive cues too. Okay, so best way to set it up is lying down. Then it's not so much torque on the knees. So the way to do it is from the beginning, you're stacking your knees into a 90-degree position in front of you. Boom. Your elbow, that's your left elbow, everyone, is right under your shoulder. And then your right leg is going to come back behind you. How much? So much that ideally your knee, hip, shoulder, and head is in a straight line on your mat. You'll get a nice stretch there, a little bit in the hip. Good. Now, all we're doing is we're catting, right? So we're inhaling to expand the rib cage out. Exhaling to try to find that connection that I've been yammering on about the whole time from this position. Maybe not bringing in the movement yet. It feels good, actually, to do this. Now, if it's a little tough on your knee, you can bring that extended knee a little forward. I'm just trying to give you conditions for structure. Okay, here we go. When you're ready, if you want to do the movement, you can. We're inhaling. I can't really see your little squares, so if you're doing it already, kudos. But inhale to expand the ribs. Exhale to bring your right shoulder down, and you're directing your gaze through the window under your arm. Maybe you can see your heel behind you. Another reason why I cue your body straight. Inhale up. We're expanding out. Exhale down. And keep doing this. You keep moving, I'll keep talking. What are we doing here? I'm trying to get you to use this deep core musculature, working synergistically with the breath to help support you in a twist. Now, you don't want to go, if your core can take you further than your spine can, try not to go where there's pinching, but just go where there's that really nice opening. And if you get frustrated, that's okay. This is our learning the movement. You'll have a video to practice this. And I always recommend to lean into the thing that frustrated you the most when you're ready, because that's usually the thing we have to work on. Okay, so let's take this after 1 or 2 more breaths / repetitions to the other side, and then we're going to get a little more active for the final portion of the class. This is fairly active though. It's just more mentally active. All right, so now I'm on my right side, which is a triple 90 position. My right elbow is under my shoulder as if I'm preparing for a side plank. My bent knees are stacked and my knees are bent at 90 or close to it. I'm going to take my left leg and I'm going to bring it back behind me, aspirationally, so that from my knee to the top of my head is making a straight line. Hand on hip or hand gently behind the back, just to get a little more chest opening here. And just focus on bringing that cat connection. Hey, is the punch bowl on top, known as your rib cage, and the punch bowl on bottom, known as your pelvis, are they in alignment to each other? Okay, when you're ready, bring in movement. Inhale, expanding the ribs, and yes, the belly, low back out. Exhale, connect to those deep core muscles, pelvic floor, transverse abdominis to help support the twist. Direct your gaze back, and maybe, just maybe, you could see your heel, and then inhale and stack back up. And then repeat this action. The slower you can move through the action, like you're moving through butter, or like you're moving through a milkshake, the more you'll be able to find the rough edges of this movement, the places where you might be cheating through it and just using your arm. And break. So now we're going to do some loaded positions now. These first positions were primarily fairly unloaded positions, except for our plank, but we're going to bring in a couple of more. And I'm going to have you go to your back. And I'm going to have you have your block on hand. And I'm going to have you have your strap on hand as well, my dear friends. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a bridging position, okay? So now we're supine. We're lying on our back. Why am I placing the block between the thighs? As usual, we're using the adductors, the inner thighs, to help cultivate and even, dare I say, trick you into keeping your pelvis neutral. If you can, try to get your ankles as close to under your knees as possible. And see if, I know it's hard to see, if you could get the midlines of the feet and the legs parallel, not just for the pelvis, but so that we can use the musculature of the legs much more evenly. Now, I'm going to have you just kind of bump your hips up real quick and slide a strap or a belt under you, if you have one. If you don't, it's fine, but this will help enhance it. Palms up, I'm going to have you grab on the strap. Here's our setup position right here, okay? I'm going to cue you through it. Ready? Just work on the breath. We're turning that on first. Inhale up and out, or inhale out, not up, excuse me. Exhale, lift the pelvic floor, wrap the abdominals. Just do that a couple of times. Then with your palms facing up toward the ceiling at your sides, holding onto a strap or a belt, I'm going to have you try to pull on that strap or belt or resistance band, if you even have that. Just a little bit with straight arms. That's horse arms. You'll feel the shoulder blades move down the back a little bit. Keep that connection to your strap. You're going to keep the tops of your hands on the floor. And then when you inhale, expanding the ribs, you're preparing. Exhale, you're going to press your feet into the floor and lift the pelvis with the glutes, but the core muscles when you exhale. Inhale, you'll expand and you'll roll the spine vertebra by vertebra down. Exhale, lift the pelvic floor, wrap the abdominals, and use those muscles to support your bridge. Inhale, expand the ribs out, roll the spine down one vertebra at a time. Exhale, we're connecting to those cat muscles, rolling the spine up into a bridge, keeping our connection to our block and our strap. And so now you know the pattern. I'm going to sneak on over and take a look at y'all. Again, in the future, if you don't have a block, you can use a pillow. So we have that block. Yep. The midlines of our feet and legs are parallel. So maybe a little bit narrower, Karen, with the feet. That might help. Tops of the hands are still on the floor, but we're pulling on the strap. We're squeezing on the block so we can connect to the pelvic floor muscles. So when we inhale, we expand the ribs out. When we exhale, we connect to the block. We lift the pelvic floor, wrap the abdominals. The whole time, we have that gentle pull on the strap with the tops of the hands on the ground. So again, all we're trying to do is find this intrinsic connection from a supine bridge position with a lot of different things that are loading the position. So I'm making it harder purposefully for you to be able to find this connection now, because there's more things going on in your body. I'm a real rascal. And I'm even going to say 3 to 4 more deep breaths actually from this position. If you really want to overdrive it, then without moving your feet, just draw your heels in the direction of your pelvis to connect the hamstrings a little more. Your feet aren't moving on the floor though. So Karen, you just moved your feet. Your feet aren't moving on the floor. It's actually just isometrically drawing back. Good. And release. One vertebra at a time and shake it off. So some folks went statically on that. They kept their bridge, and that's really good too, because you can still work on that expansion and that intrinsic connection on the exhale. I didn't finish that sentence. The expansion on the inhale and the connection on the exhale. So that's also effective, but also, making reps in that bridge that are connected to the breath is also another way to make it maybe not feeling more challenging physically, but mentally, because we're trying to do all these things and connect to the intrinsic core. So who has a foam roller? Can you show me a foam roller if you have one? Good, just put it in your screen so I can see it. It would be a long foam roller you'd need. Okay, excellent. Let me see it. Awesome, Allison. That one looks like a meanie. There you go, the blue one. So a softer foam roller is good. If you do not have one, which I do not actually, I have one, but I have a real small one, and it won't suit us for this. If you do not have one, you can roll up a towel, okay? Or you can use something like a bolster, like I'm going to use. I'm going to have you lie on your back now. That's supine on the bolster. For now, knees bent, feet flat. And you want the bolster, it's spine length, actually. So it's actually running the length of your spine. You want the back of your head to be on the foam roller, and you want your sacrum to be able to be on the foam roller, supported. A joke I always make, I still love it, is you don't want to be Pez dispensing, right? So you don't want your head to be hanging off the foam roller. You want to have support all along your spine here. No rules yet. I'm not going to give you anything quite to do at the moment. I just want you to work on expanding your ribs on the in-breath and then bringing in that connection on the out-breath, the exhale, from a somewhat neutral position, whatever feels comfortable to you. So we're just changing orientation and the load a little bit here. But again, all we're working on is this quote unquote superpower, as I call it. Mula and Uddiyana Bandha, as it's known in yoga. The root and the abdominal connection. Okay. So from this position, let's get our feet together, knees together. Yeah. And then we're going to heel toe the feet, maybe 1 or 2 times, so that we're anywhere from hip to shoulder width apart. If you can align your feet like we've been doing the whole time, with the feet, the midlines of the feet parallel, and as much of the legs parallel as possible. If you're a little wider than hip width, technically it's not going to be parallel, but the intention should still be there. You can keep your hands at your sides, relaxed, and straighten the arms and straighten the wrists and tent your fingertips. Or if you're looking to make this more challenging, you can go into dead bug position. Okay. So knees bent, feet flat, arms either straight, fingertips on the ground, or arms forward. Now, same breath pattern. Inhale to expand, exhale to connect, right? Lifting the pelvic floor and wrapping the abdominals up the spine. Good. And we're just going to do that with one leg lifted. The more you straighten that leg, the more load you're putting on those muscles and the more challenging, quote unquote, it will be. Any of these positions is good. Everyone's practice is a little bit different. But what you're looking to do the whole time is that kind of baseline fundamental action or series of actions. Inhale to expand through the ribs. Exhale to connect to those muscles. Now, being on the foam roller, you're definitely going to feel it challenge your stability. And these muscles, the transverse abdominis, are what you can put your leg down. Yep, if you need to, shake it off. The muscles that we're learning how to connect to are what is going to stabilize you. If you're using the obliques or the rectus, it's going to take a lot more effort to be stable. Okay, other leg here now, okay? Here we go, tabletop that leg. Or you can straighten the leg to progressively load this. Keep breathing into this, expanding to inhaling to expand, excuse me. Exhaling to reconnect to those muscles, just like you were standing at the beginning of the class. Do this for a few breaths. And I'm going to also remind you that even in this position, we're trying to keep the punch bowl of the pelvis and the punch bowl of the rib cage even to each other. Are your ribs flaring here? Are you feeling this in your low back? Then you've lost your cat position, unless you're nursing something previously in the back. And if you're nursing something previously in the back, maybe you're feeling this connection help support you a little more. On your next exhale, bring that foot down. We're going to take a split second to windshield wiper the knees, and then return to your original position. And now we're going to tabletop both legs here. Remember, options with the arms. Arms are at your sides. Fingertips are tabletopped, or excuse me, yeah, tented is the word, excuse me. Fingertips are tented. That's our first version. Second version, dead bug. Such a morbid phrase. The more straight you go, the more awareness you're going to need to connect to this inner unit, powerhouse, Mula, Uddiyana, Bandha. For this practice right here, your reps are each successive breath cycle. So inhale, feel your shirt tighten on your back, maybe on the belly. or inhale, excuse me. Exhale, feel the connection to the pelvic floor and the transverse abdominis. Inhale, feel the ribcage expand. Out, not up. Exhale, bring in these powerhouse muscles subtly to support this position. If you're looking for more, you can place the block between your thighs and work to actively squeeze that as you're in a dead bug position. Inhaling to expand the ribs. When you're inhaling to expand, you're releasing that connection to the core muscles just a tiny bit. It's there, but you're just oscillating it off a bit. And then when you exhale, then you're reconnecting to it. While you exhale, if you have the block between your thighs, try to squeeze out a little more. Just enhance this sensation. 4 more breaths. If you're feeling devilish, the trick is to try to straighten out your legs without changing anything in your body. So you don't want to detect a change in your spine. If you start to detect a change in the conditions of your spinal alignment, then that just means you've reached your endpoint for today, and there's nothing wrong with that. And when you're ready to take a moment, you can break. Give me a thumbs up if everyone's alive. Good. Anyone learn anything new today? Give me a thumbs up if you did. Even if it's something small, I'm happy about that. Anyone have any information reinforced? Good. I'm happy about that. All right, so just 2 more things, but our motif remains the same. Okay, the motif is we want to keep that connection, synergistic connection to the breath and the deep core muscles, the pelvic floor and transverse abdominis. Can we windshield wiper our knees and roll ourselves up to a seated position? We did a little twist here. If you want to sit on your foam roller now, a la this, or if you want to sit on a block, that's also great too, like so. And if you have another block, everyone has 2 blocks. If you don't have a block, you can grab like a pillow, or you can even grab your strap. Yeah. Okay, so we are going to do an active end range twist here now. Passive end range. Whatever seated position is comfortable for you. I'm doing it from a Sukhasana, okay, with my sitting bones rooted on the floor. Passive end range is what we typically know and love from most yoga classes. It's where you're actually, maybe you're using your core, but for most folks, the arms are kind of driving the equation. You know, your hands are pressing on your knees and you're twisting yourself. What I want to do here is I want to take any bit of kind of extrinsic loading of the twist out. So we're just going to use our core muscles. So from your seated position with your hips a little bit higher, you have your object. It could be a strap, right? It can be a block. If you're holding on to the strap, you can hold it with the tops of your hands up. If you would like to challenge it a little bit more, you would hold palms up. Holding on to the block, I would like you to hold on to the 6-inch edges of the block. And I want you to try to have a straight wrist from your knuckle to your elbow, your knuckle to your elbow. So just work on everything we've been working on today. Inhale, you're focusing on expanding the rib cage out, maybe feeling the shirt tighten on your back a little bit. Exhale, feel that deep connection in the core musculature. And just do that a few times a la carte, on its own. After 1 or 2 times, inhale, think about expanding the breath out, not up. But on the inhale, also think about lifting through the crown of your head. So you're making your spine longer. On your exhale, you're going to squeeze the block and pull on it like you're trying to pull it like it's taffy. And we're going to twist to our right. Then you're going to inhale and stay in the depth of that twist. But expand the ribs out. And then when you exhale, you're going to try to twist maybe a 1/16 of an inch more. There's a lot going on here. So when you inhale, you're reaching through the crown of the head toward the ceiling, and you're expanding the ribs out. When you exhale, you're bringing in our cat connection in the core, and you're bringing a little bit more depth into that twist. And you're just repeating that with each successive breath cycle. Active and range twist. I'm going to give you just a couple cues to be aware of as you're doing this active and range twist. Are you feeling like maybe you're favoring one sitting bone over another? If you are, that means you're tilting your hips and you're coupling into your spine. Karen, maybe bring your hands closer together on your strap. Just a little bit more. Yeah. That'll give you a little more connection to your shoulders there. It's also going to lessen your twist, but that's okay too. We want to use our muscles to twist here. And we want to really kind of imagine that we have this subtle inhale and expansion up through the top of the head, lengthening the spine and out through the ribs. And then when we exhale, the core muscles connect and we twist. Inhale up through the crown of the head and out through the ribs. Exhale, connect through the intrinsic core muscles to help support the twist. Inhale to center. Just notice a difference between sides. See if you notice anything. And we're going to go to the other side for our final action today. So we're just switching sides. And that feels like work. Bye, Bonnie. See you later. It was good having you. You didn't miss anything. We're almost done here. So, okay, other side. If you already know the progression, go for it. If not, you're sitting equally on both your sitting bones. We're still trying to keep the pelvis and the ribs even. We're trying to keep the spine long no matter what. And we're just bringing in breath, maybe 1 or 2 breaths for preparation. And then on your next inhale, when you're ready to boogie, you inhale through the crown of the head and lengthen the spine away from the floor. Then you exhale and you imagine the pelvic floor lifting and the abdominals wrapping and helping power and support this deep twist. And then all we're doing is rinsing, washing, repeating that action. Inhaling through the crown of the head and ribs out. Exhaling, deepening that twist. So you're staying in the twist as deep as you can if your body feels like it wants to today. And we're just advancing the stretch a little tiny bit with each successive breath being supported by the core muscles. And so the movement you're doing with your body, you know, you're holding onto your block or your strap and you're pulling on that block or strap to connect the shoulders. All of these different rules, equally rooting your sitting bones, inhaling to lengthen the spine, all of these different rules are just kind of a way for me as your trainer right now to give you distractions, making it a little more challenging at the end of the class for you to try to find this thing you've been working on finding the whole time. Twisting in alignment, using only your core muscles and breath to do it, feels like work after a few breaths. And you're really pulling on that block if you're trying to make it extra challenging. You're trying to stretch your block or your strap. And 1 or 2 more breaths, and then I'll have you come to center. Release your props. straighten your legs out. You can just bring your legs or your legs. You can bring your shoulder legs behind you and windshield wiper the knees left to right. My angle is off now. Just to release out the low back. And so, okay, I just want to reiterate for the sake of everyone here is everything we did today was centered around helping you find a deeper connection to this thing that gets mentioned in every fitness class or every PT appointment that you go to ad nauseum. And I hope it demystified it. And what I tried to do again was either increase what I call magnifiers, positions that'll make you feel it more, or just to get you to find that connection stronger, I wanted to create obstacles at times so that you had to work a little harder to find it. So, so hopefully it's been demystified just a little bit more. And hopefully, even if you didn't get it all the time, even I wouldn't in a full class, hopefully you found it a little bit more. Can I get a thumbs up? And you can unmute yourselves because very clumsily and ungracefully, the class sequence is finished. And if you have any questions that have been nagging you that I haven't addressed during this class, now is a perfect time. And thank you all for being here, by the way. It's really